British farming would be better without subsidies. Whether you like it or not, farm subsidies here in the UK are changing. Since leaving the EU, we're moving away from the common agricultural food production subsidies to more environmental style subsidies. It's what the UK government call public money for public good. Not everyone likes this and not everyone agrees with this. The critics say that we need to defend food security as an island nation, whereas the advocates see it as quite simply progress. It's a battle between the barley barons of the East Coast versus the small hill farmers struggling to make ends meet. So, would British farming be better without subsidies? 25 years ago, Cambridgeshire farmer Ollie Walton did a series for the BBC entitled Against the Grain, and in this, he pitched a very compelling reason to ditch farm subsidies here in the UK. And the belief was, and I quote, that farm subsidies increase the price of land, they make it increasingly difficult for new entrants to enter the sector, and thirdly, they encourage farmers, rather than looking towards their customers, look to the government for help. Now, there are many farmers out there who think that they need subsidies because, quite frankly, they wouldn't be here without them. But, as the documentary argues, farming neither benefits nor needs subsidies these days. Now, there are many people, I imagine, disagreed strongly with what Ollie Walton preached in that documentary. But 25 years on, we're beginning to see a lot of what he said come true. Land prices are at a record high, and unless you inherit a farm, it is incredibly difficult to get into the industry. And coupled with this, farmers and farm bodies' first port of call in a crisis, like we're seeing at the minute, is the government. But rather than talk about the theory on this, we can actually look to a real life example in New Zealand, where at the end of the 80s and the early 90s, they went completely cold turkey and got rid of all farm subsidies. This article in the New York Times looks at the lessons learned from removing subsidies in New Zealand agriculture. And as the president of the Federation of Farmers in New Zealand said, and I quote, "What's happened since the reforms is that there's been a new type of farm that has emerged, a business farm." And he goes on to say that whilst the removal of subsidies made farming harder, it generated a sense of pride that comes from entrepreneurship. As another Federation of Farmers president in New Zealand said, when you're not going to get paid for what the market doesn't want, you've actually got to get off your arse and find out what they do want. Now, I'm a capitalist. I believe in free markets, and I believe that competition can bring out the best in us. So I'd argue that in an ideal world, there would be significant benefits to removing subsidies from British farming and help the industry in the long term. Yes, it would be hard, possibly too hard for some, but I believe it would go a long way in dragging us out the hole that we're currently in. But we don't live in an ideal world. Would too many farms go under? Would we become overly reliant on food imports? With natural capital, would the price of land just remain high anyway? Quite possibly yes. So I don't believe that getting rid of them in their entirety is the best option. But we do, as an industry, need to become much, much less reliant on farm subsidies. We need to become business farmers first and foremost. As Ollie Walton said in that documentary 25 years ago, why are farmers any different to steel workers, to coal miners, to textile manufacturers, to your local corner shop in your local village? And the answer is, we're not. We are the last major industry in the UK to be subsidised. But now that's changing. So whether you agree or disagree, whether you believe it to be a force for good or the death nail to the industry, it doesn't matter, because it's happening, and it is happening now. And we are soon going to be able to put Ollie Walton's theory to the test.